Call meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Cody, roll call.
Supervisor Gunning?
Here.
Treasurer Rice? Here. Trustee Haupt?
Here.
Trustee Lannon?
Here.
Trustee Worley?
Here.
Clerk Cody here. Trustee Micus is excused.
All right, that brings us to item 4, which is approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion
to approve the agenda as is, or are there any additions?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Okay, we do have a motion and a support. Any discussion? Seeing none, we take it to vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Agenda approved. We move on to item 6, which is public hearings. This is going to be consider the adoption of rezoning ordinance 2018-05 997 East Remus Road. We need an introduction on this, please.
Thank you and good evening. Public hearing. The property is located at 977 East Remus Road. It's currently zoned as agriculture. The applicant desires to eventually split the parcel so that one parcel contains the single family dwelling, and it would be zoned R2A, which is 1 and 2 family low density residential. The remaining, or the parent parcel if you will, would retain the agricultural zone status. Planning Commission met on this on August 21st, held a public hearing and voted to recommend to this board approval of the rezoning. This item was before you at your last meeting on the 12th, and the Board of Trustees voted to schedule a hearing, a public hearing for tonight. And at the last meeting, I had indicated that the action regarding the split, which is associated with the property, although distinct from the action of this public hearing, would be in front of you on October 19th. Instead, that's on your agenda for tonight. Later in your agenda is item 10C for action with an effective date on the split of October 6th. And that effective date coincides with the time lapse that's required to make it the rezoning effective, so that if you do rezone it and you do split it, then the split's not on a piece of non-conforming property from a zoning perspective. So that's the background on this. Thank you.
Thank you. This time we do open up the public hearing, so if there's anyone that wishes to speak on this rezoning ordinance 2018-05 at 997 East Remus Road, please come forward. Seeing no one, we close public hearing at this time and move on to item 7, which is going to be public comment. This is restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda and this agenda only. Who would like to come up, if any, to speak in public comment? Seeing none, we close public comment and move on to item 8. This is going to be reports and board comments. Item A, we do have a list of boards and commissions where we do have some vacancies coming up towards the latter part of the year and also first of next. So we'll begin to look at those and begin to compile a list.
We have one October 17th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I was just going to text Jeremy McDonald.
Oh, that's the sidewalk committee, right?
Do you care if I text him and see if he's still interested in being on it?
I've reached out to Mr. McDonald,
okay.
and he does have interest. He's been busy, but I just spoke to him last night, and he'll be submitting his application.
Okay, I won't text him then.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any further comment on item A and reports and board comments? We move on to B. This is Board of Trustees update. And this would be, I assume, the monthly activity report.
Right, like what meetings we attended, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
Okay, all right, that's worded a little differently than normal. Okay, so I would assume let's start over here with Tim.
Yeah, I did attend a couple meetings here in September, mid-September. On the 18th, attended the Isabella County Board of Commissioners meeting. And they approved their fiscal year 2019 general fund budget. And I have a copy of that I can share. I'll be putting that in the office along with other correspondence that we leave there on the bookshelf, or if anybody would care to look at it now. And certainly could make copies if you like. It's roughly a $20 million budget. And they indicated they had a fund, they're anticipating about a $7 million fund balance at the end of the fiscal year 2018 budget. Of note, there was a request by the Sheriff Department to get body cameras, and through a number of grants that they applied for, they were able to fund those 100% through grant money. So the sheriffs and the board were pretty excited about that. They also approved to set their tax rate at the same level as it was in the past fiscal year. I can't tell you exactly what that rate is, but it's going to remain the same. They put in just 2 requests for 2% money from the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, and they listed those items both as critical. They'll generally have more items than 2, and they'll list them, in a priority fashion. And the 2 are monies for the Commission on Aging in the amount of a little north of $511,000. And they also put in a request for the Sheriff's Office for a command vehicle in the amount of roughly $34,000. And they also moved and approved for a secondary road patrol and traffic accident prevention program to begin October 1st. And that will be in the amount of $58,650. And that pretty much concluded the County Board of Commissioners meeting. And again, the budget is here. Also, I attended the Isabella County Township Association Council meeting, and they had a presenter in, the Apex group, the wind folks that are hoping to establish wind turbine alternate power in the northeast portion of Isabella County. And they virtually spent their time talking about setbacks, going through the whole series of lists of where a wind tower could be located, as well as they talked about the leasing program, which they're hoping to wrap up possibly in October. If you have not signed agreement to get in the lease program with those folks, then they're looking to close the book soon on that. And that's all I have.
Tim, I noticed that there's turbines now right around Shepherd into Isabella County. They mention how far those are going to move towards Mount Pleasant and to the east and the west? Is it?
My understanding on that group is not the Apex group, but
Right.
it's Township.
Correct.
Yep.
So it will remain within the boundaries.
Right
of
across the
Cole
road from
Township.
Norm.
That's right, I see them
So you can see them?
from afar. They're still in a distance, but I can
Okay.
pick up 6 from when I'm coming into my road. You know,
Okay.
but you just see the little tips of them, actually.
Well, on a hot day, it'll be kind of nice, though.
Right, you'll get a fan.
Yeah.
I guess I'd mention just to share they have the potential of producing 400 megawatts of power, I believe is what they would be allowed to put into the grid. And they'd speculate potentially they could have 180. They would max out at about 180 turbines, which rivals what's in existence from what I understand in Gratiot County.
You know, I noticed driving down to Alma the other day that as soon as you get onto the expressway from the south side here, all the way down from Shepherd, all the way down to Alma, there's windmills now, particularly on the west side, on the east side of the road all the way down. But I think they're also going to be, you can see there's more going up on the west side as well, so.
And they were putting a couple up today on the west side.
Or were they?
Yeah, Forest Hill Farms there, Quarter
Correct.
Farms. There's 3
Forest
of them.
Hill, that whole
Yeah, there's
section
3 of
back
them
in there,
going on there.
they're putting in a ton of them back in there. I saw that. I was driving around back through the farms there the other day and saw that, yeah.
The ones Tim was talking about, they're gonna be taller than these. They're bigger windmills.
Yeah.
They could range as whatever they choose to go with, whichever design.
Yeah.
They're like 2.5 megawatt units, I
Mhm.
believe. And they'll be consistent. They won't be a variation in sizes, but the tallest when the blade is in the most upright position, it could reach 600 foot.
Similar
Also,
to the
there's
ones
a
up by McNeil.
possibility, if they don't get enough turbines in to meet the 400 megawatt, they're also in the solar business. So they could start possibly looking at going into solar to maximize that 400 megawatt.
Interesting. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Bill?
There's a road commission meeting tomorrow night, but I went by the Meridian Road Bridge on Monday, and they said they were gonna pave it yesterday, and they did pave it yesterday. I went by there today and they looked at it, and they figure if everything goes okay, they could have it open by Friday.
Awesome.
Said they were waiting to get it striped and finish up the guardrails.
Did you come in from the north or the south?
I went in from the north.
Okay. Be interesting to see how that grade looks now on the south side.
It's still the same.
Well, I
They-
thought
they
they were
weren't
going to
able to
raise it.
lower it.
They were. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's still the same strong dip then. Okay. All right. Kim.
I'm good. I'm here.
Okay. Norm.
Yeah, I didn't have any meetings since our last board meeting, but I just wanted to remind everyone that September 30th will be the due date for the submission of our 2% request to the tribe. And I know Mark can probably speak on this later, and that has to do with the 4 ball fields, 2 of which are in Union Township, McDonald Park, and then the other 2 are in the city. And this will be a request that we will be sponsoring. The city will be involved with it as well. And this is in preparation for the 2019 Little League World Series state tournament to be held in Mount Pleasant, which would be really cool in terms of a destination site. So I'm assuming we'll probably hear sometime in mid-October if we got the grant, so, or the request that we're putting in, so.
All right. Thank you, Norm. Lisa?
At the city meeting, they did a proclamation in support of the United Way Week from September 23rd through the 29th. They set the priorities for the fall 2018 Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe 2% funding requests. And the department presentation, Fire Lieutenant Randy Keeler, he did a good presentation, and he explained about the city, Union Township, CMU, how he works with all of the all of them so it's a good watch. So it's within the first 10 minutes of the meeting, so it's a good watch. Talks about Union Township and stuff.
Alright.
So.
Thank you, Lisa. EDA, we had a very productive meeting. We approved our contract with to look at the master plan of Jamison Park and get a layout, get an engineered drawings, layout, drainage diagrams, essentially. So we'll have a basis at which, over the course of the next how many years, we can make increased improvements to that area. So I think that was incredibly productive. We also approved our contracts to have our waste receptacles and benches refurbished. We're going to save from the original budget item, we're going to save somewhere in the neighborhood of about $35,000.
Wow.
So that was a big bonus, and the subcommittee did a great job. So with the cost overruns that we had on the roads, it pretty much equals almost out completely with what we had for overruns on the roads. So big bonus. So yeah, it was a very productive meeting, and it's an excellent group of people in that committee. That's it for board comments. This would be item C, and this is going to be the Planning Commission and ZBA updates by our township planner. If you'd like to come up.
Good evening, board. ZBA did not meet on their regularly scheduled first Wednesday of the month meeting this month. They did, however, meet special meeting September 19th. The one item for the special meeting was a text interpretation. It was an interpretation on section 23.2.B through C, which is in B5 highway district. The question ultimately for them to interpret was that if a restaurant as a main or primary use with a brewery for a secondary accessory use, as long as the off-site consumption of the brewery did not outweigh the on-site consumption, would this be allowed? The ZBA held a public hearing. They heard from the applicant. They heard my thoughts, and they discussed carefully section 23.2B through C, and they ultimately determined their interpretation that it would be allowed, a restaurant with a brewery in a B5 district, as long as the restaurant maintains as the primary or main use, and the brewery remains as a secondary accessory use. The Planning Commission met this month, and they had 3 items. The one was a site plan for 5353 South Mission Road. This was a site plan associated with the special use permit, which was an expansion of an existing self-storage business. I believe it's Mission Road Mini Storage on 5353 South Mission Road. The site plan was approved. They had a site plan amendment, which was amending a site plan previously approved last October in 2017. It was for 1239 East Broomfield Road. The amendment called for a new access way. The original site plan showed the access on the plan coming from an existing parking lot. The new access would be coming directly off Broomfield Road. That was approved. And then ultimately the last item they had was a public hearing for a special use at 5450 South Mission Road. It called for what the applicant described as a park and sell operation. The board or the commission did not act or deliberate on the issue. They simply held the public hearing and will further consider the item at their October meeting. So no action was taken on that special use. The public hearing was simply conducted.
Peter, wasn't there already one that we approved last year? Right there at that Park and Sell deal. Didn't we already approve one last year just south of there?
Yeah.
Yeah, south of
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a guy that repairs cars and he's gonna.
Clint's. Yeah, Clint's was approved.
Yeah,
Clint's
yeah,
was approved
yeah.
both for the repair and actually have the.
Yeah, so these will be kinda like right next door to each other then, right? Pretty
Not right
close.
next door, but yeah, in the same area.
You can hit a golf ball from one to the other, so,
Maybe.
yeah.
Bill, he wasn't there to answer any of the questions we had, so we were gonna wait until he was present
Oh,
so we could ask questions.
okay, I'm sorry.
Is that site gonna be in the old, the heating, the Superior Heating, building? Is that what they're looking for? Is there a
I'm-
site for that? Do you know?
No, the if we're talking about the same building, I'm not sure what
Right.
the building's currently vacant for sale. The building will not be used. It would be they want to gravel a parking area north of the building, and just it would be
Oh,
a
okay.
you come, you park your car or farm equipment there, you pay a fee to the owner of the land to place your car there, and so it's a park and sell.
That's the area that currently is being graded. It would be to the, would be to the north of Clint on the west
West
side
side.
of the.
Same side of the road, just north. Yep.
Pretty much across the road from the storage buildings.
Yeah.
Correct.
From
Yeah.
the existing self-storage.
Correct,
Yep.
okay.
So the same limitations then would be on this gentleman as it was on Clint, because I think that with Clint, we specified exactly what could be sold
Right.
on that particular site, as opposed to, they couldn't put farm machinery, garden tractors,
Right.
it had to be automobiles, correct?
Yeah, or, mobile homes or,
Yeah, there was a long list, so we have to, I'm sure that was probably
RVs.
presented at the meeting, correct, that there were limitations on what, it would be the same, we'd
Lisa
have,
said-
if we're gonna
Yeah,
weigh
we
one,
were
then we're gonna weigh the other,
Yeah,
right?
They're waiting.
there
We're
was
waiting to
no-
ask questions,
There was no
'cause-
discussion or dialogue. They simply held a public hearing, so none of that was brought up yet.
That's why
Okay.
we're waiting on it, so we can ask those specific questions
Okay.
on what he wants to use it for.
All right.
So Peter, on the restaurant brewery, operation, so you're talking to establish what the primary use is, that is based on like a dollar value of sales? Like food, restaurant services versus beverage, on-site consumption, and it sounds like you're talking about off-site or sales for takeout.
The interpretation was not to interpret or determine which was the primary or the accessory use. The applicant presented the question as the restaurant would be the primary or main use, and the brewery would be the secondary or accessory use. And so the zoning board of appeals looked at as long as the restaurant remains the primary use, as long as the brewery remains the accessory or secondary use. There was criteria that I recommended they look at. There was a letter, zoning letter, that I had supplied the zoning board of appeals with. I believe it was, some of the issues involved there was revenue based. Some of it was the amount of barrels that would be transported off-site for consumption, how many would be used for on-site consumption. There was criteria that they followed to help determine that they could gauge in determining if the restaurant would truly be the primary use, if it would continue to be the primary use. But they weren't deciding which was which was the primary or which was the secondary. The applicant asked a question with, if the restaurant, as long as the restaurant remains the primary and the brewery remains the accessory. If we looked at it as the brewery is primary and the restaurant is secondary, it would have been a different question.
So it wasn't a real determination, it was a, as you mentioned, a text interpretation.
Interpretation.
You also spoke about another item that came in front of you, and it had to do with entrance, exit, I guess, onto a thoroughfare. And it seems like we've talked as a board about really looking at those in the sense of a safety factor about how many exits onto roadways make sense, limit them where you can. And so I'm assuming that was all part of the evaluation. I think that's the direction we've talked about in other areas, is in our thought the importance of reducing where you can entrances and exits where existing could be used.
Yeah, cross access is an important part of planning, especially as a road is more developed with more activity, especially in a business zone district. The Planning Commission did bring up, you know, why do you want to have the off-road access versus access from the existing parking lot? The applicant stated that this location was, in their opinion, better. It worked for them better. But ultimately, we wouldn't have been able to deny the off-road access. It was approved by the Isabella County Road Commission standards. They allow the access off of Broomfield Road, and so there was no way to deny as long as it met the standards.
Yeah, I wasn't looking to deny anything. I just want to make sure that we keep that as
Yeah, no, but the
part
idea
of
of
our
cross access is
Yeah.
very important. Yes.
Yeah, I believe the thought process too is it was basically a service road back to a maintenance facility that was going to be used very, very little and not lighted. So I thought that was part of the issue too. I was sitting in that meeting. I hope everybody had the opportunity to watch it. It wasn't the most tidy meeting I've ever seen in my life. I thought it was confusing. It was long. It was disjointed. I'm not sure the motions that were made were correct from the beginning to the end. I saw a staff member essentially tell the board to stop the debate and vote. I was incredibly disappointed. I could go on even more, but I won't. But I will say that if you haven't watched it, you should. Any other questions for Peter?
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. You can sit down now. Okay, that brings us to item 9, consent agenda. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. I can talk.
I'll second it.
And we did, somebody looked at the payables.
Is my turn.
All
In
right,
the month of September, I reviewed them and
you do a thorough job. I've watched you.
things look good.
All right, so all in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We move on to new business. This is going to be item 10. This is going to be a discussion action item. This is by the Planning Department. Consider the adoption of the rezoning ordinance 2018-05 and to publish notice of adoption of rezoning ordinance 2018-05. This will be a roll call vote.
This item was the subject of your public hearing earlier tonight. I kind of recapped the issue at that time, so I don't have anything else to add unless you have questions.
I'll make a motion to adopt the rezoning ordinance 2018-05 and to well. Yep, that's it.
Support.
Okay, motion and a support. Do we have a discussion on this item?
No, we discussed this pretty thoroughly
Yeah, we
last
did.
meeting,
Right.
so there's not much to discuss.
All right.
The case was presented very
Yeah.
well.
If I recall, it's kind of a need to do
Yeah.
that, so
Correct.
the zoning would make compliance with the designation that
Correct.
was appropriate.
And the back 30 acres remains ag. Front would be with the little parcel that's going to be rezoned for the residential in order to make it compliant for the size of the lot. Had to do with the frontage, if I recall.
All right, further discussion? All right, let's take this up for roll call vote.
Supervisor Gunning,
Yes.
Treasurer Rice,
Yes.
Trustee Hauk,
Yes.
Trustee Lannon,
Yes.
Trustee Worley,
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
All right, motion carries. Zoning ordinance approved. Item B, this is a discussion action item from the assessing department. This is approval of land division number 37-14-026-10-005-08. This is located at 445 East Bluegrass Road. The owner is MP Note LLC.
Thank you. This item is begins on page 40 of your agenda packet. The existing parcel contains a strip. I'm sorry.
Starts on, starts on 38.
Yeah.
40.
38 is the
38.
start of it.
Unless we got the wrong one. Yeah.
All we have on page 40 is signatures. So
Yeah.
it's 38 on ours.
got-
Mine's,
I've got
mine's
40.
on 40, but
Mine's 38.
it's
You
a matter
guys
of
are-
paper
You guys are
versus
old school.
paper versus
Old school
electronic.
38, new school 40.
This is a land division at 4445 East Bluegrass. Second item on the action item on the agenda. And the existing parcel contains a strip mall, just to orientate you. There's a Big B's Coffee there, a restaurant, I think a financial services firm. And to the west of that building is a vacant lot. That's the entire parcel right now. And the split would carve out the vacant portion to the west into its own parcel. Both parcels would be conforming. The split would facilitate the development of that vacant lot. I'm not sure if it's a sale if it's a sale or the current owner would be developing it. The application was reviewed by the township clerk, township planner, and the township assessor, and all recommended approval of the split. Be happy to answer any questions you may have on that.
Mark, is that the vacant land that then would be to the west of that little strip mall there?
Immediately to the west.
Okay. And when they divide it in half, is each one going to be 1.95 acres? Is that how that is set up?
The existing parcel contains the strip mall building,
Okay.
and so that would kind of be divided into its own parcel, and then the 1.9
Is the vacant
is
lot?
just a vacant piece to the west.
Okay. Yeah, nice thing about that, from what I recall, going back to the planning commission, is that we're talking about more continuity of sidewalks going down on Bluegrass in particular. We had given them a waiver for that parcel until it was developed. So rather than put in a sidewalk and have them broken up, you know, as they're trying to do construction, that we would wait until construction had been accomplished or been finished, and then sidewalk will go in. So now we'd be getting that sidewalk going further to the west, past down to the apartments that are on the front there. So it gives us some more continuity going down, which will be nice.
Interesting to see if it takes it all the way to that entryway and actually has like a
I think it does.
handicapped
Yeah.
access and stuff. I
think
know
it
to
does.
the east that's a problem.
Yeah.
Does that driveway stay there then, that access to the west of like Bigby right now?
I
There's
don't
a access
know.
out onto,
This is just
Bluegrass.
This is just the split of the parcel.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Um,
think it would be a very good project, you know, that we're doing this split, and, you know, puts that vacant land now in use. And as I said, I think then we get some continuity.
That would come up with site plan
Yeah,
and the road commission looking at the driveway cuts and regarding the sidewalk, that, actually there was a requirement of construction or the end of this year.
Correct.
And so we've already been in contact with the owner about having that installed yet this year.
Gotcha.
And,
Yeah, we gave them the deadline of 12/31, if I recall.
right.
Yeah. Well,
And
with that,
that's on track to be built this year.
well, if everyone's okay with that, I would like to make a motion that we approve the land division number 37-14-026-10-0005-08, located at 4445 East Bluegrass Road, owner MP Note LLC.
Second.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, we take this to vote. This would be the approval of land division for parcel 37-14-026-10-005-08. And this is located at 445 East Bluegrass Road. The owner, MP Note LLC. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We move on to our next item, item C.
And that was 4445.
4445.
Yeah, 4445, yes.
Yeah, you left out a 4, but I just wanted to make sure.
I think everybody understands. Item C.
Both times.
And this is going to be, again, discussion action item. This is from the assessing department. This is another land division. The parcel number is 37-14-018-040-002-00. This is located at 997 East Remus Road.
And this is on page 49 of your agenda pack, I'm pretty sure.
47 for us.
Okay. And
Paper versus electronic.
this was the subject property of the public hearing earlier tonight, as well as the rezoning. With the zoning approved, the split can occur with the result being both parcels would be in conformance with code. One parcel with the home zoned R2A and the other portion agricultural. This land division would be effective October 6th, if approved tonight, and that is to keep it in compliance with the zoning time frame that was just approved earlier this evening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'll make a motion to approve the land division for parcel 37-14-018-040-002-00 located at 997 East Remus Road, owner Richard Beltnick, 811 East Remus Road, Mount Pleasant.
I support.
Okay, we have motion support, discussion. I know Mr. Beltink very well, and I know this is his family home. His father built it, so in one way it's difficult parting, but another way he's maintained it for all these years, and it's I think it's a burden, so off his back. So I'm in favor of this division. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor of the approval of the land division for parcel 37-1-040-002-002-00. This is located at 997 East Remus Road. The owner is Richard Beltink, 811 East Remus Road, Teresa A. Clark of 6785 Michael Drive, Troy, Michigan, 48098, in case you want to send her a letter. And Martha A. Clare of Eagle, Michigan. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Land division is approved. We move on to item D. This is going to be a discussion action item presented by the manager. This is policy governance 4.1 unity of control.
Thank you, and I'm not going to guess what page the agenda's on.
Subtract 2.
That would be 56, and for others, maybe 58. This is the annual review of, this is the Board of Trustees annual review of policy governance number 4.1, which is titled Unity of Control. There are certain of the policies, this being one of them, that are reviewed by the Board of Trustees annually to assist the board in helping them determine if they're adhering to their own policies. The purpose of this policy review is to ensure, and I quote, only officially passed motions of the board are binding on the management team. There are 2 other subsections within this policy. Subsection 1 states, decisions or instructions of individual board members, officers, or committees are not binding on the township manager, except in rare instances when the board has specifically authorized such exercise of authority. And then section 2 states, in the case of board members or committees requesting information or assistance without board authorization, the township manager can refuse such requests that require, in the township manager's opinion, a material amount of staff time, funding, or is disruptive. And so the also in your packet is the tool that is used every month as it relates to monitoring this policy. And this is basically an item for the board to discuss amongst themselves.
So we open discussion.
Well, board, I guess as I reviewed that and reflected on the question here as we review our various sections of our policy governance, I guess I would say maybe we're not in full compliance in meeting the unity of control portion. And I say that because this board speaks as one voice collectively, and for any one of us to go out individually and make requests, unless you're doing it as a citizen and not part of the board, you know, that's going to be another issue. What I have witnessed on occasion, that it seems that maybe members of the board individually or not as a full board will direct, seek out requests for things that haven't necessarily been talked about at the board level and come to consensus by the board. And if you look at policy governance and review 3.1 governing styles, there's information in there, and in particular 3.1, 3.13, 3.1.31 kind of talk about our responsibility as to how we govern, and we are one body. We're looking at high level into the future direction of how we want the township to move forward. and understanding that the township manager reports to us as the board, and we set out our expectations for accomplishments, and it's the manager who has the leeway and latitude to assure that he accomplishes the visions we set forward with latitude to accomplish our ends in the manner that they see fit to achieve them. So it's not really about us telling our manager how to accomplish what we set out to achieve, but to allow that person to do their job, and then we would evaluate the manager on the results as to our ends being met. So I don't think throughout this past year we have been strictly in compliance with this. And so how do we remedy that? What do we need to do? I think we all as a board need to really invest some time and try to understand our policy governance. We have that written out. We've been issued a book by the author, Dr. Carver, on policy governance. So it's important to brush up and stay on top of that. And as we conduct business at the board, you know, it's our charge to fully understand, first of all, if the question is even our question to answer. You know, is it at our level, or is it a question that we really don't have business because we've already set policy and expectations, and it is going to be at whether it's the township manager or a department head's question to answer. And sometimes I think we get into the business of the managers or the staff that report to him. So that's an area I think we can continue to improve to assure that we are focusing our energies on what we're charged to do, what we've all agreed to do under the operations of policy governance.
I'd like to see us have a work session. I mean, to be totally honest with you, I'm sick of hearing about policy governance every 5 minutes, because I know there's people in the audience that have asked me questions, and I can't say anything to them. I'm sorry, I can't say anything, call the office. I'm sorry, I can't say anything, call the office. Because I don't know what I can say or can't say. Because every time I come to a meeting, a book gets whipped out, and I'd like to know, I'm confused on all this stuff anymore. I mean, we're elected officials, and when one of your constituents comes up to you and asks you a question, oh, I don't know. That's where I'm at. I mean, I think we need a work session to go over some of this stuff. I'm sick of hearing it. I mean, we need to set guidelines for the manager too on all these issues. And maybe some of them were not. Maybe some of them need to be tweaked. But that's my position on everything.
Well, I think you both articulated your points of view very, very well. I agree with your assessment as to where we stand as a board in terms of this particular policy. I think more often than not we err, and that's our Achilles heel. You know, no one individual, any one of us, can go and speak on behalf of the board without the permission of the board. The strength of our governance is our unity. When we speak as one voice, after we make a vote, even if you're the dissenting vote, it's then your responsibility to be on board with the consensus of the board's vote. That's the way it works.
And we've done that way.
Now, is it a perfect? I don't think it is. There's probably some adjustments that can be made. But there's two parts to this. One part in terms of a solution, and I've said this on several occasions. I think that what policy governance defines for us as elected officials, as a functioning board, it defines very articulately about what our roles are. It has a description of our duties and responsibilities. It has the boundaries of our authority, the limitations of our authority, how things get delegated. It's a very, if you read it, it's a roadmap on how the government in this particular organization works. Now, is it perfect all the time? No. But the beauty of policy governance is that, as you say, like in a work session, Bill, and that's where I agree with you, is that you always have an opportunity to make adjustments. If there's anything within policy governance or anything that isn't working or you have some concerns about something either with management or whatever, it doesn't have to become a contentious, combative, adversarial issue. It never has to become that. What we can do as a board is that we sit down and we discuss it. That's the beauty, again, of policy governance. We have three options in which we can make changes if we're not satisfied with certain things being done, or if we want to have limitations on things. One, policy governance allows for us to have, we can review policy governance. We can, for example, go to our executive limitations, and you can put certain limitations if you think there should be certain limitations, whether with management or with us. That can be put, we have that ability to change things within the policy governance. We can change things all the way through the policy governance. At any given board meeting, we can set a policy about how we want things to be done henceforth if you're not happy with something. And again, our governance allows for us to do that. We can give directives. We as a board oftentimes say, Mark, can you take care of such and such, the 2% or whatever it is. Can you take care of this? Can you see that this gets, and come back and give us a report on that. So it allows us to give the directives. So policy governance is not where you're stuck in concrete and you can't move, and this is an immobile system. It's a very flexible system. It's how you operate with it. But when issues come up, if they're immediately treated with a bellow of anger and this intensity of contentiousness and adversarial, then it's only going to make it worse. It makes it worse for everyone that's on this board. So my sense is that if there's issues that come up, it's not that sometimes that we don't even, it's not that we necessarily even disagree with some of the things that people are saying, but how it gets said becomes a source of contention. So I think that we really have to look at that, each and every one of us, because make this, the power of this board, the way we serve our constituents best, the way we do all the goal setting that we've done for this township, all the remarkable work that we've done within the 2-year period of time, we should be proud of what we've accomplished. But it's accomplished when we do it as a unified force. If we begin to work as renegades, and the book addresses that, the Carter book about the renegade, trustee. If you work as a renegade, it's only going to cause dissension, and it's going to make things worse. We lose the unity of what this board stands for. So all I can say is, if there's any issues, the policy governance allows us to do this. I would go so far as to reinforce what Bill is suggesting, to have a work session that we can do again. Maybe even have Susan Radkin come, where we might even look at some of the issues of their policy governance and some areas that maybe are, that we have some concerns about that aren't functioning right. We always have that opportunity to do that. So my sense is I would make a motion that we consider having a workshop planned in the not too distant future. Half-day workshop with Sue Radkin, and then each of us come in and we start to look at some of the issues that we have and see what changes should be made. But if there's issues, then we change them through the policy governance. You don't go out and in public start bashing the board for things that you disagree with. It's not the way business is conducted, and we have to all adhere to that. Yeah.
I definitely support that as long as it is after the election.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes,
Sorry.
and I agree with you. That's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine.
But I agree with what everybody's saying.
Okay, Kim, you didn't have an opportunity.
I was following, and I agree as well. You know, we've got, you know, there's a lot of things that just little things add up, and you know, this work session is a great idea to you know, just kind of work through those issues, and you know, if there's something we don't like, get to the bottom of it, and
Maybe make
the
some
understanding
changes.
of it. So
Yeah.
Bill Bravo.
Well, no, half of us came
Yeah.
on this board, and we were new, and you guys already were going under this model, so you guys knew a lot more about it than we did.
Yeah.
You know, and we just get thrown right into it, and it was like, whoa.
Yeah, well, we also come from backgrounds where we're business owners, we make decisions, we're presented with an issue, we solve the issue. I agree with Bill, is that, Norm, I understand what you're saying, but my experience has been whenever there's been any kind of question, one of our board members gets his manual out and starts giving speeches. And so, henceforth, Bill and myself, I think, I maybe Bill can concur, is that then you become hesitant to say anything because you know you're going to be attacked. And
Is that what
I
you're
think
saying?
that I
No,
think
I'm
that
not saying
I
that.
think
I'm-
that
I'm not gonna
I
have
think
someone
that
put words
my
in my
my
mouth.
is my position on the floor right now. So sometimes what I feel personally is that when you make a suggestion, it gets shot down. When you try to make an adjustment or try to make some kind of suggestion that maybe an adjustment needs to be made, it gets shot down. I don't think that necessarily, I understand what Norm is saying, that the government's is always changing, and but I don't see any changes that have been made in that governance substantially in 8-9 years. So I don't think that necessarily has been done. And is it confusing? Yes. I mean, it's I don't have time to dedicate 3 months to studying how this thing works. I got a general gist, but I also understand what we were elected to do. And so if there's an issue that comes up, then we should feel free to bring that up, and we shouldn't be attacked, and we shouldn't have a policy governance manual thrown into our face and told that we're out of line. So there's where I'm at with it. I think a work session would be probably invaluable, but I think within that work session, I think there needs to be some discussion and some flexibility. So we move on to the next item on here, which is item 2.
Is
Are
the
we
discuss-
ready to move
discussion's
on?
not
Is there
over
more
yet.
discussion?
Well, we've got 4.2. We've already discussed 4.1.
There might be more discussion. So,
Okay.
Bill, you were going to say
No,
something?
I-
You have the floor.
I'm fine, we'll discuss it at our work session.
Yeah. I just think that after 2 years of doing this, we all should have by now assimilated the process better than perhaps what we have. And again, there's always a learning curve that's different for each individual, and I understand that. But I do think that we all have an obligation to adhere to what the governance is, if that's what if that's the current standard by which we're holding ourselves. But I do think that the work session would be a way to go, and I think that an opportunity to just talk things out. And again, it's not only what gets said, it's how it gets said, and how it gets said often becomes the source of reaction rather than the issue itself.
Thank
The
you.
issue gets lost in the presentation. And when the presentation is done in a way that is professional, civil, cordial, then I think that the point gets heard a whole lot better. So it's not the point that's necessarily the issue. It's the way it gets communicated. So
All right, we done with item 1 on there? So this would be...
My interpretation
Okay, go
is,
ahead.
you know, we're reviewing board policy 4.1, unity of control,
Mhm.
which
Includes both
they're
of
not
them.
separate
Yeah.
items.
Yeah.
We're
Okay,
talking about,
so we're talking about all 4 at the same
we're
time,
talking
gotcha.
about
Yeah.
all of this. And just if I could continue for a second. It's my belief that the tool we're using to govern is a tool that makes boards increase the probability that a board is going to be successful. You know, if we had 7 individuals attacking things individually, not in unison, you would have chaos. We would not have clarity of what the board's trying to accomplish, because really you got 7 different people just out there randomly firing and trying to utilize staff, personnel, manager to accomplish your agenda. So the way for a board to work, and the way that our citizens should mandate their elected officials to work, would be to work in a fashion, and we selected this tool 8 years ago to help us accomplish and be a truly effective board.
Oh. We have a motion for the work session.
yeah, so I would make a motion that that we schedule a work session with Sue Radkin, preferably. So I'm making a motion that we schedule a work session for the board to review our policy governance, make adjustments if indicated, and to meet with perhaps Sue Radkin in order to review this policy.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second
Oh,
it.
you already
Go ahead.
seconded.
All right.
You already seconded though.
So the motion is on the table for discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a terrific idea, you know. It is our duty to review, and not just annually. It's a document, a policy, it's our operational policy that we need to be bouncing off and checking against every meeting, every item that comes before us. And it is very clear that it's not a stagnant document, it's a living document that it expects us to modify regularly as needed. And that's, I think, part of what this board doesn't reflect on enough is what our rules of engagement are per the policy, and as we deem modifications are needed, we don't do that enough. It should be more than once a year work session. It should be continuous. We should bring up suggestions often, probably.
I think that would help out with the understanding the process better, maybe bringing things forward that we see on a daily basis that could be fixed. So I would be in favor of that also. All right, any further discussion? All right, so let's bring this up to vote. We're going to be scheduling a work session with Sue Radwin in the near future after the election.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep, at her availability and our availability.
Right.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so that takes us to item 11. This is going to be extended public comment. This is restricted to 5 minutes, and it's regarding any issue. If anyone would like to come up for a 5-minute public speaking opportunity. Seeing none, we close extended public comment. We move to item 12, which is manager's comments. Mark?
Thank you. Quick update on the Isabella remodeling. When I mentioned to you last, the bids had come in quite a bit higher than what was originally contemplated. And so we have had a meeting with the architect, and what we've done to date is we issued what's called a post-bid addendum, and we requested from the bidders more detail on their pricing on specific items as well as groups of items. We've received that back, and we've done some preliminary review, and maybe more than preliminary, of those responses, looking at adjusting scope possibly of the project, and that recommendation for the construction contract should be in front of the board for your consideration on October 10th at your October 10th meeting. We're anticipating at the next meeting during presentations that the report out on the Pump Station 7 service area will be made, that we contracted with Gordy Frazier to do earlier this year. That's in the O'Connor Drive, Mission Creek area. So we should receive the report out on that at the October 10th meeting. A reminder that the fire millage renewal vote is on the November ballot. The 2019 budget recommendation, we just received that back from the printer, so that'll be going into your boxes and mailboxes yet this week. I'll also send each of you a electronic copy, and then I would imagine at the 10th kind of present that more publicly like I normally do. And we have been approached by 2 different neighborhoods, one St. Andrews neighborhood, the other is Cornerstone, about some special assessments. One has to do with lighting, one has to do with paving, and you know, basically that process is underway. There's discussions that need to be had to try to understand from the neighborhood what they're actually wanting to see done, so that then it can be properly costed, and then petitions would have to be circulated to the property owners, and then the other thing is determining, because all these projects require upfront financing, and where does that come from? I mean, it's easy enough to agree to pay back something, but you have to have a lender to begin with. So that issue is kind of being worked. And then we did my review a couple meetings ago. The next step is the annual contract. I have an employment contract that is an annual contract, so we'll need to be discussing that in the upcoming meetings as well. And then just briefly on the 2%, Trustee Worley covered the one application for the Little League related items. There are a couple items in that application that are not just field related as it relates to McDonald Park, paving, or not paving, but seal coating the driveway. We've done a third of the parking lot, a third of that each of the last 3 years. So we put that in the application as well. There's a second application that's being submitted that is seeking grant assistance for the Jameson Park master plan that was mentioned earlier tonight. That's about a $15,000 price tag, 13 or 15. So that grant, we're asking for 50% of that. The Little League grant that's being submitted is roughly $70,000 for improvements to city fields, township fields, ball fields, at the request of or under the leadership, if you will, of the respective Little Leagues, Mount Pleasant City Little League and the Union Township Little League. And then there's a third request going in that addresses, hopefully, the CMU, what I refer to as the CMU Deerfield connector, the pathway that's been talked about up from Deerfield, punching through up by the research park and connecting to some existing pathways that are on campus that then can take you further north and east and other places. So that is all I have. Thank you.
All right. That brings us to item 13, which is final board comment. We'll start with Norm.
I have nothing. I think tonight was a good meeting, and I'm looking forward to our policy governance meeting. I think that's a good place to go.
Lisa?
October 9th is the last day to register to be eligible to vote November 6th election. So make sure you're registered to vote. You can look it up online on the Michigan Secretary of State website.
All right. Kim?
I'm good.
Bill?
Do you have absentee ballots in yet?
Not all of them, no.
Okay. I mean,
Some of them.
they're available to pick
Some
up?
of them.
Okay.
We should be getting the rest of them by Monday.
Okay. I just had the one I keep talking about, the building official. Last month, we paid out $11,200 for a building official to be here 4 days a week. At $11,200 a month, it's $134,000 a year. It's more than we pay anybody else. On our staff, I'm sorry. More than we pay anybody else on our staff. I'm done.
Yeah, a couple things I jotted down that we might think about in the future. Looking through Mark's report, you know, I really like your report, Mark. It easy to read, laid out by department. Helps you to keep in focus of the tremendous amount of workload and things that are going on here in the township. But is it the special use permit that is under the planning commission's charge to make the decisions on, as opposed to the board?
Special use comes here to the board.
Okay. What is it that's under the charge of the planning commission?
They would have the site plan review, which is their primary task. But when it comes to special use, they will approve, or they'll make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees to approve or deny.
I should be more prepared. It's something that they do. I mean, they're the decision maker in it.
Correct.
It doesn't come to the board.
Correct.
Which we've talked about. Maybe we should consider if that's how we want it done.
Also, I believe
So-
it's like home occupancy permits, or what, it's the, it's not called that, maybe help out.
Well, generally speaking, site plan approvals are the purview of the planning commission, and I believe that's by state statute. May be wrong on that.
I know we've talked a couple of things.
The special-
As mentioned, maybe we would want to consider.
The special condition use does require ultimate approval by the Board of Trustees. Zoning code rewrites ultimately are voted on by the Board of Trustee, but they're sourced, if you will, by the Planning Commission. That they have that authority to recommend those changes to the Board of Trustees. Of course, the Board of Trustees can also communicate to Planning Commission that they'd like them to look into certain things, and they presumably would.
Okay, sorry about my vagueness on that. Is there any thoughts that we'll be looking, I know you've been working with the fire contract. Any anticipation that that will be in front of the board to discuss?
Yeah. That expires 12/31 of 18, and I would have liked to have had it before the board by now. You know, maybe the second week in October. I don't know that the first week is realistic at this point.
So regardless, you anticipate bringing that?
Oh yeah, the board has to approve that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And in your future agenda items, you made a note about land division approvals, regardless of considering approval by the Board of Trustees or the assessor. Be interested to talk about that. So we'll see that in a future agenda item.
Yes.
Sure.
And that, you'll see that sooner rather than later.
And remind me, Mark, you mentioned a couple times the joint airport operations.
Yeah, so
Is that something that's joint, meaning the township's involvement?
The airport is owned and operated by the city. There is a operations board, I'm not sure that's the proper title for it, made up currently of all City of Mount Pleasant residents. And there's been discussion over the last 2 years. One of the first meetings I attended as manager was on this topic, of trying to create a joint operations board that would be comprised of various units of government and possibly others, Central, Mid-Michigan Development, that type of thing. And so that's been being discussed to a degree or another over the last several years, last 2 years. And I think it's starting to get a little bit more shape, and there are agreements that have been being circulated between the administrations of the various entities, county, tribe, Union Township's part of those discussions. And once the administrations are comfortable with something that we can bring to our respective boards, then we're going to be doing that. And it'll be at that point that each of the respective boards, Board of Trustees, City Council, will decide if they want to move forward with a joint operations that has authority or responsibility to have input, formal input, into the operations of the airport, along with some funding obligations that might come with that. And then the agreement would also speak to the how that operations board is governed, how the members are appointed by the respective governing bodies.
All right, thanks for reminding me about what that was about. Then my final one was, and I should apply it to myself more than anybody probably, maybe we should restrict board comments to 5 minutes as we restrict public comment.
Yeah. Good idea.
Something to consider.
All right. I have no comment tonight. So we do need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second? Okay. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.